The last line of defense. Commander Elena Rodriguez stood at the observation deck of Titan Base, watching the methane clouds swirl across Saturn's largest moon. The vast shipyard stretched before her, normally bustling with activity, now eerily silent save for a single berth. There, shrouded in secrecy and shielded from prying eyes, lay humanity's last hope, the U.S. Defiant. Commander, the final systems check is complete. Lieutenant Sarah Chen's voice carried a mix of exhaustion and pride. For 3 years, they had worked in absolute secrecy, pushing the boundaries of physics and human ingenuity to create something unprecedented. And Elena turned, catching her chief engineer's reflection in the reinforced glass. The dark matter cascade is stable. All simulations show. Sarah hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Well, they show exactly what we theorized. Whether that's good news or bad depends on your perspective. Elena nodded grimly. The Defiant wasn't just a ship, it was a calculated gamble. While the Krivith Empire steamrolled through humanity's outer colonies with their superior technology and overwhelming numbers, Earth's best minds had worked feverishly to develop a weapon that could turn the tide. Admiral Drake is waiting in the command center, Sarah added. The Krivith fleet just breached the Kuiper Belt. We're running out of time. The walk to the command center felt longer than usual. Every step echoed through corridors that had once housed thousands of workers, now evacuated to Earth. Only a skeleton crew remained, those essential to launching humanity's most ambitious project. Admiral Drake stood before a holographic display showing the solar system. Red markers indicated the advancing Krivith fleet, 15 capital ships, each carrying enough firepower to level a continent. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. Commander Rodriguez, Drake's weathered face carried the weight of countless sleepless nights. Tell me some good news. The Defiant is ready, sir. The dark matter cascade system is stable and operational. And the crew? Handpicked. Each one knows the risks and volunteered anyway. Elena thought of the men and women who would serve under her command. Many had lost homes, family members, or entire colonies to the Krivith advance. Drake manipulated the hologram, zooming in on the Krivith fleet's formation. Their arrogance is their weakness. They're not even bothering to maintain proper combat spacing anymore. 3 years of victories have made them sloppy. They think they've seen everything we can throw at them, Elena replied. Every conventional weapon, every tactical innovation. They're convinced they've got us figured out. That's what we're counting on. Drake turned to face her fully. The Defiant looks like a standard heavy cruiser on their scanners. They'll see exactly what they expect to see. Another desperate attempt by humanity to stem the tide. Their overconfidence is our opportunity. Elena studied the tactical display. The plan was audacious, perhaps even insane. The Defiant would appear to be protecting the Jupiter shipyards, the last major manufacturing center outside Earth's orbit. The Krivith would expect resistance there, but nothing they couldn't handle. The dark matter cascade, Drake continued, has never been tested in actual combat conditions. The simulations are promising, but we're betting everything on a theoretical weapon, Elena finished, against an enemy that's never lost a major engagement. Not just the weapon, Commander. We're betting on you and your crew. On human ingenuity, determination, and the capacity to do the impossible when our backs are against the wall. A young lieutenant burst into the command center, face flushed with urgency. Sir, the Krivith fleet has increased speed. They'll reach Jupiter in 36 hours. Drake's expression hardened. Then it's time. Commander Rodriguez, the Defiant is yours. You know what's at stake. Elena snapped to attention, her spine straight as steel. Yes, sir. We won't fail. Good hunting, Commander. And Elena. Drake's formal demeanor cracked slightly. Give them hell. The next few hours passed in a blur of final preparations. Elena watched her crew board the Defiant, 150 of humanity's finest. They moved with purpose, each carrying the weight of their species' survival on their shoulders. Standing on the bridge for the first time as commander, Elena took in her surroundings. The Defiant's interior was sparse, almost austere. Every ounce of excess material had been stripped away to make room for the massive dark matter cascade system that ran through the ship's core like a spine. "All stations report ready, Commander," announced Lieutenant Commander Marcus Wong, her XO. The bridge crew sat at their posts, tension visible in their rigid postures. Elena took her seat in the command chair, feeling the subtle vibration of the engines through the deck plates. "Lieutenant Chen, status of the cascade system." "Operating within parameters, Commander. Ready to deploy on your order." "Very well." Elena touched a control panel, opening a channel to the entire ship. "All hands, this is the Commander. In a few hours, we will engage the largest Krevith fleet ever assembled in this system. They believe they know everything about us, our capabilities, our tactics, our limits. Today, they learn how wrong they are." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Each of you volunteered for this mission, knowing it might be one way. But I promise you this, win or lose, the Krevith will remember this day. They'll remember that humanity doesn't break, doesn't surrender, and never stops fighting. Prepare for departure." The Defiant's engines hummed to life, lifting the ship from its berth with a grace that belied its size. As they cleared Titan's atmosphere, Elena caught one last glimpse of the shipyards where their journey had begun. Helm, set course for Jupiter. Maximum stealth protocols. She settled back in her chair, eyes fixed on the vast expanse ahead. It's time to show the Krevith what humanity is truly capable of. Pride before the fall. The Krevith command ship, Eternal Victory, hung in space like a twisted cathedral of metal and energy, its crystalline spires gleaming under the distant light of Jupiter. Supreme Commander Vex Terran stood before the main viewport, all four of his arms clasped behind his back as he observed the tactical display. Another human cruiser detected near the Jupiter shipyards, his second-in-command reported. Similar configuration to their standard Havoc-class vessels. Vex Terran's upper lip curled in what passed for a smile among his species. They persist in these futile gestures of resistance. How many of their ships have we destroyed in the past 3 years? Sub-Commander. 417, Supreme Commander. Their technology is primitive, their tactics predictable. And yet they continue to fight. Vex Terran turned from the viewport, his ceremonial armor catching the light. It would be admirable if it weren't so pathetic. "Show me this latest vessel." A holographic display shifted, showing the U.S. Defiant as it maintained position near Jupiter's largest shipyard. To Krevith sensors, it appeared to be nothing more than another human warship, albeit one with slightly unusual power readings. "Their energy signatures are irregular," the sensor officer noted. "Possibly a malfunction in their core systems, or desperate modifications to their existing technology." Vex Terran dismissed. "They've tried such tricks before. Signal the fleet. Maintain current course and speed. We'll crush this final obstacle just as we've crushed all others." Aboard the Defiant, Elena Rodriguez watched the Krevith fleet's approach on the main tactical display. Lieutenant Chen's voice broke the tense silence on the bridge. "Commander, they're scanning us. Standard sweep patterns only. They haven't detected anything unusual." Elena nodded. "Good. Keep the cascade system powered down. Mr. Wong, status of our apparent engine malfunction." Her XO smiled slightly. "Operating exactly as planned, Commander. To their sensors, we look like a ship with failing power systems trying to compensate. They'll think we're barely holding together." The deception had been carefully crafted. The Defiant's outer hull deliberately mimicked older human warship designs, while subtle energy leaks suggested a vessel pushing its systems to the breaking point. Everything about the ship was designed to reinforce the Krevith's belief in their technological superiority. "Message from the Krevith flagship," announced Communications Officer Patel. "They're demanding our immediate surrender." "Put it on screen," Elena ordered, straightening in her chair. Supreme Commander Vexteran's imposing figure appeared on the main viewer. His silver-scaled skin and multiple arms were meant to intimidate, but Elena saw only the arrogance in his posture. "Human vessel," he began, his translator converting his clicking speech into English. "Your presence here is futile. The Jupiter shipyards will fall, just as all your other facilities have fallen. Surrender now, and your crew will be treated according to the conventions of war." Elena met his gaze steadily. "This is Commander Rodriguez of the U.S. Defiant. We will not surrender. The shipyards are under our protection." Vexteran's secondary eyes blinked in what might have been amusement. "Protection? Your single damaged vessel against my entire fleet. Your species' stubborn pride blinds you to reality. We have destroyed hundreds of your ships, conquered dozens of your colonies. What makes you think this encounter will end any differently?" "Perhaps you should scan us more carefully," Elena suggested, allowing a hint of strain to enter her voice. "Our weapons may surprise you. We have analyzed every weapon in humanity's arsenal. There is nothing you possess that can penetrate our shields." Vexteran leaned forward. "I will give you one final chance to surrender. After that, we will destroy your ship and display its wreckage as a testament to human foolishness." Elena glanced at Lieutenant Chen, who nodded imperceptibly. The Cascade system remained undetected. "We appreciate your generous offer, Supreme Commander, but we'll have to decline." The transmission cut off abruptly. Elena turned to her crew, noting the tension in their faces. They took the bait. Now comes the hard part. "Multiple target locks," Wong reported. "They're spreading out to surround us." "Just as we predicted," Elena replied. "Their standard tactic, overwhelming force from multiple angles." "Lieutenant Chen, begin power-up sequence for the Cascade system. Keep it below their detection threshold." "Aye, Commander." Initializing pre-sequence protocols. The bridge fell silent as the massive Kryveth fleet moved into attack position. Elena studied their formation. 15 capital ships arranged in a sphere around the Defiant, confident in their ability to destroy the seemingly insignificant human vessel. "Commander," Wong's voice was quiet. "Even if this works, even if the Cascade weapon performs as designed, we'll be at ground zero when it activates." Elena nodded grimly. "I know. Everyone on this ship volunteered knowing it might be a one-way mission. But if we succeed, if we can show the Kryveth that humanity isn't as helpless as they think." She let the thought hang in the air. "Incoming fire," Wong shouted suddenly. "Multiple energy weapons, all batteries." "Evasive maneuvers," Elena ordered calmly. "Make it look good, like we're struggling to maintain position." "Lieutenant Chen, status of the Cascade system." "Power up at 30% and climbing." Still undetected. The first volley of Kryveth weapons fire splashed against the Defiant's shields, deliberately weakened to maintain the deception. The ship shuddered, damage reports flooding in from all sections, most of them carefully manufactured to complete the illusion of a struggling vessel. "Return fire," Elena commanded. "Standard weapons only. Miss most of your shots. We need them to think we're desperate." The Defiant's conventional weapons launched a barrage of missiles and energy beams, most sailing harmlessly past the Kryveth ships. The few that struck their targets were easily absorbed by their advanced shields. Supreme Commander Vexteran's voice filled the bridge, heavy with contempt. "Is this truly the best humanity can offer? Your weapons are useless, your shields failing. You have fought bravely, but the outcome was never in doubt." Elena allowed herself a small smile as she watched the Kryveth fleet tighten their formation, moving in for the kill. They were about to learn a harsh lesson about underestimating humanity. The Cascade system hummed beneath her feet, building to a power level that would rewrite the rules of space combat forever. "Let them think that," she whispered. "Just a little longer." The trap is set. The Defiant spun through space, its movements deliberately erratic as it absorbed another barrage from the Kryveth fleet. Warning klaxons echoed through the ship's corridors, a symphony of carefully orchestrated chaos designed to complete their deception. Hull breach on Deck 4. Lieutenant Wong called out, fighting to keep the satisfaction from his voice. The breach was another piece of theater, a controlled release of atmosphere to simulate battle damage. Elena gripped her command chair as the ship shuddered. Status of the Cascade system. 70% charge, Lieutenant Chen replied, her fingers dancing across her console. Power signature still masked by our damage emissions. They haven't detected anything unusual. The Krevith fleet had fallen perfectly into position, their massive warships forming a tight sphere around the Defiant. Each vessel oriented its weapons for what they believed would be a final devastating salvo. Their formation, designed to prevent any possibility of escape, had inadvertently created ideal conditions for the Cascade weapons deployment. Commander, Communications Officer Patil interrupted, incoming transmission from the Krevith flagship. On screen, Supreme Commander Vex Terran's image appeared, his silver scales gleaming with triumph. Your ship is crippled, your weapons ineffective. You have proven your courage, Commander Rodriguez. Now prove your wisdom. Surrender and spare your crew a pointless death. Elena allowed exhaustion to creep into her voice. And if we surrender, what then? Will you spare the shipyards, the colonies? The strong rule, the weak submit. This is the natural order of the universe. Vex Terran spread his 4 arms in what might have been a gesture of magnanimity. Your species will survive under Krevith guidance. Resist further, and we may reconsider our mercy. 85%, Chen whispered, keeping her voice below the transmission's pickup threshold. Elena straightened in her chair, letting the facade of fatigue fall away. You know, Supreme Commander, humanity has a long history of being underestimated. The strong have always assumed they knew our capabilities, our limits. She smiled, a predator's smile that made Vex Terran's secondary eyes narrow. They were always wrong. Your bravado is meaningless. Our sensors show your ship is moments from complete system failure. You have no weapons that can harm us, no defenses that can stop us. 90%, Chen reported quietly. That's where you're wrong, Elena replied. We have something you've never seen before. Would you like to know what it is? Vex Terran's laugh was a harsh, clicking sound. More human deception. Your primitive technology holds no surprises for us. Cascade system at 95%, Chen announced, loud enough now for the transmission to pick up. Field harmonics stabilizing. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Vex Terran's alien features. What deception is this? Our scans show no unknown weapon systems. That's because you're scanning for what you expect to find. Elena's voice carried the weight of 3 years of preparation, of humanity's desperate gamble for survival. You're looking for energy weapons, for missile systems, for anything that fits your understanding of warfare. But we've learned something in these past 3 years of fighting you. Maximum power achieved, Chen reported. Cascade field ready for activation. Vex Terran barked orders in his native language, suddenly alert to the possibility that something was wrong. But his fleet remained in their perfect attack formation, still confident in their superior technology and overwhelming numbers. We learned that the best weapon is the one your enemy doesn't believe exists. Elena's finger hovered over the activation control. Lieutenant Chen initialized the cascade sequence. Deep within the Defiant's core, the dark matter cascade system hummed to life. Energy readings that had been carefully masked now spiked, drawing power from a source the Krevith sensors couldn't comprehend. Unknown energy signature detected, Vex Terran's sensor officer shouted in the background. It's unlike anything in our database. Break formation. Vex Terran commanded, but it was too late. His fleet had drawn too close, thinking to overwhelm the seemingly helpless human vessel with their combined firepower. You said we had no weapons that could harm you. Elena spoke softly now, watching as panic spread through the Krevith command crew. You were wrong. Lieutenant Chen, activate the cascade. The space between the ships began to distort, reality itself twisting as the dark matter cascade took effect. The Krevith vessel's energy shields, designed to repel conventional weapons, offered no protection against a weapon that altered the fundamental forces of the universe. "What is happening?" Vex Terran demanded, his composure finally cracking. "What have you done?" "We've changed the rules," Alina answered simply. "Humanity sends its regards." The transmission cut off as the Cascade field reached critical intensity. On the Defiance bridge, the crew watched in silent awe as their years of work culminated in this moment. The trap had been set, baited with Kriveth pride and human-seeming weakness. Now it would spring, and the galaxy would learn that humanity was far from defeated. "Cascade field approaching maximum expansion," Chen reported, her voice steady despite the enormity of what they were about to unleash. "Point of no return in 10 seconds. Alina looked around at her crew, seeing the same mix of determination and apprehension on every face. They had trained for this moment, prepared for every contingency, but nothing could truly ready them for being at the heart of such destructive power. "Remember this moment," she told them. "Whatever happens next, remember that humanity faced extinction, and instead of surrendering, we chose to fight back. We chose to show the galaxy that we will not go quietly into the night." The Cascade field reached its critical point, and the universe held its breath, waiting to see whether humanity's desperate gamble would rewrite the rules of warfare forever, or become just another failed attempt to stop the unstoppable Kriveth advance. "Cascade field at maximum power," Chen announced. "Ready to initiate final sequence on your command." Alina took one last look at the Kriveth fleet, still struggling to understand the trap they had wandered into. "Let's show them what humanity is truly capable of. Initiate final sequence." Moment of truth. Time seemed to slow as the dark matter cascade activated. The space between the Defiant and the Kriveth fleet rippled like water disturbed by a stone, reality itself bending under forces never before unleashed in combat. The first signs of the weapon's effect manifested as a subtle distortion, barely visible to the naked eye, but registering as massive disruptions on the ship's sensors. "Cascade field expanding," Lieutenant Chen reported, her voice tight with concentration. "Primary wave approaching Kriveth vessels in 3, 2, 1. The effect, when it hit, was beyond anything they had seen in simulations. The nearest Kriveth ships began to twist, their hulls warping as fundamental forces rewrote themselves around them. Their shields, designed to repel energy and matter, offered no protection against an attack that targeted space itself. "By the ancestors," the fear in Vex Terran's voice carried clearly through the still open channel. "All ships, emergency withdrawal. Full power to engines." But the Kriveth fleet's tight formation, intended to trap the Defiant, now worked against them. Ships trying to escape collided with their neighbors as space curved and bent around them. Energy weapons fired in desperation passed through impossibly curved paths, some even striking the vessels that had fired them. "Cascade field at 20% of maximum intensity," Chen called out. "Structure failing in multiple Kriveth vessels." Alina watched the tactical display with a mixture of awe and horror. The Kriveth ships, once seemingly invincible, were being torn apart by forces they couldn't comprehend. But something was wrong. The Cascade field was expanding faster than their simulations had predicted, the power readings climbing beyond expected parameters. "Lieutenant Chen, status of our containment systems." Chen's fingers flew across her console, her expression growing concerned. "The field is becoming unstable, Commander. The interaction with the Kriveth shields is creating a feedback loop we didn't anticipate. Power levels are spiking." The bridge shuddered as the Cascade field's effects began to reach the Defiant. Warning alerts blared as the ship's structural integrity sensors registered the increasing strain. "Can we shut it down?" Alina demanded, watching as more Kriveth ships succumbed to the weapon's effects. "Negative," Chen replied, her voice edged with panic. "The reaction has become self-sustaining. If we don't find a way to contain it, the field will continue to expand until it tears apart everything in this sector of space, including us." Through the view screen, Alina watched as the flagship Eternal Victory broke apart, its mighty hull splitting like paper in a storm. Vex Terran's final transmission cut off mid-scream as his ship dissolved into a twisting mass of metal and energy. "All hands, this is the commander," Elena's voice carried across the ship's comm system. "We have a Level 1 emergency. Lieutenant Chen, options." Chen's hands danced across her console, running calculations at lightning speed. "The cascade field is being amplified by the quantum signatures of the Krivath shield generators. If we can create a counter-resonance, but we'd need more power than our engines can generate." "What about the Jupiter shipyards?" Wang suggested. "Their fusion reactors are still online." "Too far." Chen shook her head. "We'd never establish a stable power transfer at this distance." Elena studied the tactical display, mind racing. The cascade field continued to expand, destroying everything in its path. Then she saw it. A possibility. A desperate gamble. But they were good at those. "The Krivath weapons," she said suddenly. "Their main gun uses quantum vacuum tunneling. If we could trigger all their remaining weapons simultaneously." Chen's eyes widened as she followed the commander's thinking. The energy release could create a containment shell around the cascade field. But we have to get the timing perfect, and someone would need to manually transmit the activation codes. From the auxiliary control room, Wang added grimly, "Our main systems are too damaged to handle that kind of precision timing." Elena nodded, rising from her command chair. "I'll do it." "Lieutenant Chen, upload the activation sequences to auxiliary control." "Mr. Wang, you have the bridge." "Commander," Wang protested, "the radiation levels in that section of the ship are already critical. Even with protection, you'd have minutes at most." "Then I'd better work fast." Elena managed a smile. "Continue evacuation preparations. If this doesn't work, get the crew to the escape pods." The journey to auxiliary control felt like walking through hell. The cascade field's effects were visible now through the ship's windows, space itself twisting into impossible shapes. Warning signs flashed on every door, indicating the growing radiation danger. Elena sealed herself in the auxiliary control room, pulling up the activation sequences Chen had prepared. Around her, the ship groaned as reality itself tried to tear it apart. "Chen," she called over her comm, "I'm in position. Talk me through it." "Uploading final calculations now." Chen's voice came through with increasing static. "You'll need to trigger the Krivath weapons in precise sequence to create a stable containment field. One mistake, and we all die anyway." Elena finished. "No pressure. Starting sequence now." Her fingers flew across the controls, initiating command codes that would activate the weapons on the dying Krivath ships. Each had to fire at exactly the right moment, their energy combining to create a shell of quantum force that could contain the cascade field. The radiation alarms in the control room screamed warnings as levels climbed beyond survivable limits. Elena ignored them, focused entirely on her task. One sequence after another, each timed to the millisecond. 30 seconds to critical expansion, Chen reported. "Commander, the radiation in your section." "Almost there." Elena gritted through clenched teeth, fighting the growing pain. "Final sequence uploading now." The ship shuddered violently as the cascade field reached its peak. Through the small window, Elena could see the twisted wreckage of the Krivath fleet suspended in the distorted space around them. One last command. One last chance. "Initiating final sequence," she announced, pressing the activation key. Now we find out if our gamble paid off. The remaining Krivath weapons fired simultaneously, their energy beams curving through the warped space to create a sphere of pure force around the cascade field. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, the distortions began to stabilize. "It's working." Chen's voice cracked with excitement. "The containment field is holding. The cascade effect is being neutralized." Elena slumped in her chair, the radiation's effects finally overwhelming her. "Get us out of here, Lieutenant. Show the rest of the Krivath what happens when they underestimate humanity." The Defiant limped away from the battlefield, leaving behind the shattered remains of the most powerful Kriveth fleet ever assembled. They had changed the face of warfare forever, but the cost had been high. As consciousness faded, Alina smiled, knowing that humanity would survive. They had proven once again that ingenuity and determination could overcome any odds. The stars stretched before them, holding new possibilities and challenges. But for now, they had shown the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. The legend of the Defiant and its dark matter cascade would echo through the cosmos, a testament to human courage and innovation in the face of extinction. Dawn of a new era. 3 weeks after the Battle of Jupiter, the observation deck of Titan Base was crowded with dignitaries from across human space. They gathered to witness something many had thought impossible mere months ago: the surrender of the Kriveth Empire's remaining forces in the solar system. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Wong stood at attention beside Commander Alina Rodriguez's hospital bed, which had been specially transported to the observation deck for this historic moment. Despite the doctor's best efforts, radiation damage from the auxiliary control room had left her partially paralyzed. Yet her eyes remained sharp as ever as she watched the proceedings. "The Kriveth delegation is approaching," Lieutenant Chen announced from her position near the window. She had refused any promotions or commendations, insisting that her work on the dark matter cascade system was reward enough. Through the reinforced windows, they could see the Kriveth diplomatic vessel, significantly smaller than their usual warships, approaching the base. Its hull bore the new markings of surrender, white bands painted across its traditional war-black surface. Admiral Drake stepped forward as the Kriveth representatives entered the observation deck. The aliens moved with less arrogance now, their postures reflecting their changed circumstances. The loss of their primary fleet and the revelation of humanity's new weapon had shattered their belief in their own superiority. Supreme Commander Vexteran's successor, Wong whispered to Alina. High Commander Kralvor. He was on the far side of Saturn when we deployed the cascade weapon. Kralvor approached Alina's bed, all 4 arms held in a gesture of peaceful intent. His translator clicked as he spoke. Commander Rodriguez, the Empire has authorized me to formally recognize your victory and negotiate terms for our withdrawal from human space. Alina's voice was weak but clear. The terms have already been transmitted to your government. No more conquests. No more claims of superiority. The Kriveth Empire will respect the sovereignty of other species or face the consequences. You must understand, Kralvor replied. This changes everything. The balance of power, the understanding of what is possible in warfare. The cascade weapon will remain sealed, Admiral Drake interrupted firmly. Along with the research that created it, humanity has no desire for conquest. High Commander, we only wish to live in peace and explore the stars on our own terms. The Kriveth commander's secondary eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of distress in their species, and if others come, as we did, believing themselves superior, then they'll learn the same lesson you did. Alina managed a small smile. Never underestimate humanity's capacity for innovation when our survival is at stake. The formal surrender ceremony was brief, conducted according to both human and Kriveth protocols. As the aliens departed, Admiral Drake turned to address the assembled dignitaries. Today marks not just the end of a war, but the beginning of a new chapter in human history. The Defiant and her crew have shown the galaxy that humanity cannot be dismissed or conquered. But more importantly, they've shown that our greatest strength lies not in weapons or ships, but in our ability to face impossible odds with courage and ingenuity. Alina listened as Drake continued, her thoughts drifting to her crew, those who had survived and those who hadn't. The Defiant's victory had cost them dearly, but it had secured humanity's future among the stars. Later that evening, after most of the dignitaries had departed, Chen visited Alina's room in the medical wing. The engineer carried a small data tablet, her expression troubled. The final analysis of the cascade weapon's performance, she said, placing the tablet on Alina's bed. The power readings we recorded, they were far beyond our theoretical models. The weapon didn't just work. It demonstrated possibilities we never imagined. Elena studied the data carefully. Have you shown this to anyone else? No, and I don't intend to. Chen sat heavily in the visitor's chair. We created this weapon to save humanity, not to start an arms race. The technology is too powerful, too dangerous to become commonplace. I agree. Elena handed back the tablet. Destroy the data. The Cascade weapon served its purpose. Let it become legend. A reminder that humanity is capable of extraordinary things when pushed too far. Chen nodded, already beginning to erase the files. What happens now? The Kriveth aren't the only aggressive species out there. Now, Elena looked out her window at the stars. No longer a barrier or a battlefield, but a frontier of possibilities. Now we do what humanity does best. We explore, we innovate, we build, and if anyone else thinks we're easy prey, she smiled. Well, we've gotten quite good at proving them wrong. The news of the Kriveth surrender spread rapidly across human space. Colonies that had lived under the shadow of invasion for years celebrated their newfound security. Ships that had been hiding in deep space returned to their routes. The shipyards at Jupiter, saved from destruction, began producing vessels of exploration rather than war. The Defiant itself was officially decommissioned, its revolutionary weapon system permanently deactivated. But its legacy lived on in subtle ways. In the newfound respect other species showed humanity, in the treaties and alliances that replaced threats of conquest, in the understanding that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are those who appear weakest. Commander Elena Rodriguez eventually recovered enough to walk with assistance, though she never returned to active duty. Instead, she became an instructor at the academy, teaching future generations of officers that humanity's greatest weapon was never technology, but the indomitable spirit that drove them to reach for the stars despite all obstacles. As humanity moved forward into its new era of peaceful exploration, the story of the Defiant became part of their collective legend, a reminder that in their darkest hour, when faced with extinction, they had not surrendered or submitted. They had innovated, adapted, and overcome. The stars beckoned, and humanity answered, not as conquerors or victims, but as equals among the cosmic civilizations. They had earned their place among the stars, paid for it with courage, sacrifice, and the unwavering determination that defined their species. And if anyone ever forgot the lesson of the Defiant, the empty sector of space near Jupiter, still twisted and impassable from the Cascade weapon's effects, served as a permanent reminder. Humanity may prefer peace, but they were capable of extraordinary feats when pushed too far. The dawn of their new era had arrived, and its light would shine across the galaxy for generations to come.